How's it, everyone? Welcome to the Marketing Fix podcast. Today in studio, we have Ariel Flax joining us, who's the head of sales at the Gate, ATG Digital. Ari, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Cool, man. Yeah, so for everybody listening today, we're going to talk about sales and marketing strategies, and what we're going to focus on, Ari, the head of sales at ATG, and we're going to talk about their growth, where Ari comes from. He's got an extensive background when it comes to sales, training sales teams, leading these teams, and essentially, just working people through the funnel in order to convert, I would say, leads into prospects, prospects into customers. You've gotten quite good at that, and I think that's one of the things that kind of like attracted me to you, inviting you to the podcast, just purely because we always talk about the marketing side of things. So we talk about how to get people into your ecosystem, but what a lot of people tend to forget is how do you convert these people into customers and clients and so forth. So that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring you on board, because you're going to share a ton of value, your experience, obviously having worked at a couple of companies overseas, Israel specifically, a lot of startups as well. So you bring a lot of extensive knowledge for startups and small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. So I'm stoked to have you here. Thanks again. From my side, I think do a little bit of an introduction of yourself and kind of like how you got into sales and how you got to where you are today.
Great. So look, first of all, thank you. It's great to be here. I think from my side, as you said, I look after the sales side at ATG. Look, from since I was young, selling has always been in my blood. Selling is something that doesn't only take place in the sales environment, it takes place every day. And there's actually a saying which goes, and the worst negotiations that you are in are the ones you don't know about. And that's kind of what brings me, in terms of sales, just that you're always selling. Whether you're selling yourself, you're selling, I deal with my kid on a daily basis, I deal with my wife. These are general things, but they're negotiations and they form part of that of selling. But just from a business side, sales, I think growing up, no one wants to be a salesman. Sales isn't generally something that you
aspire to be.
Exactly. When you're young, you want to be a fireman.
Yeah. Or a doctor or a dentist.
As you get older, potentially a doctor, a dentist, exactly. Accountant. So no one wants to be a salesman. Salespeople are generally, not looked at as, I would say, the top of the pop in terms of where they sit. So I certainly never thought about being a salesperson, never thought about being a sales manager or a lead of sales. But as I kind of finished school and I got stuck into my own, through varsity, studied a marketing degree, and I got stuck into a sales job. I started becoming very passionate for people, very passionate for dealing with people and solving problems. And that's kind of the way I see sales. I see sales as a you've got an opportunity to solve someone's problem. And I think that's very key. It's not that I'm trying to sell you something. It's you've got a problem. I potentially can solve this problem. And I've kind of just taken that kind of that kind of string with me and just run with it.
Was there a time in your life when you realized that you were naturally good at selling, or was it just, did you just wake up one morning and like, hey, maybe I'm good at this?
Look, also on that question, sales is something you constantly have to work on. It's a skill. There are multiple skills that form part of sales.
Agree.
And I got better at it, and I land up reading more, listening to podcasts, doing what I have to do and doing the graft, actually going out there and selling, and I got better. I would say, if you had to ask me today, the biggest thing that I've actually developed in my career in terms of sales, I would say learning how to listen, and from an empathy point of view, understanding people, showing them that you understand their problems.
And showing them that you actually have a solution that takes care of that for them without making it look like you're actually trying to sell them something, I suppose.
Yeah, spot on. And I think that's a big thing, especially most salespeople have got a bad rap. You walk in the mall, I was in a mall this morning, you got guys sitting there trying to sell you cream or whatever, and they're shouting, trying to sell you the cream. And you don't even want to look there. But that's not, those people have given a bad rap to sales. Sales isn't about that. Sales is about understanding that there's a problem and helping the customer solve that problem with a solution that you offer. And it's not going to work for everybody.
Yeah, there's this saying that the snake oil salesman, and I think that's one of the things that stigma is stuck with salespeople. People usually, when you say you're a salesman, they think that you're going to sell them, anything under the sun that's just going to be at a disadvantage to them specifically, or not necessarily going to add any value to their life. They're going to waste their money. But you said something about, salespeople are not necessarily always seen as the top of the crop, and I think that's slowly changing. If you look at the environments that we live in today, like sales obviously has always played a massive role in companies, but I think marketing and sales actually slowly becoming quite sexy. It's something that it's never been really that sexy. Like even entrepreneurship in itself hasn't really, and I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks about it a lot. He always says it hasn't really, it wasn't necessarily always a sexy thing in the past. And when you said you're an entrepreneur, it kind of like meant that you were working for yourself or you were jobless or whatever it is. And I think it's very relevant still today, but slowly but surely marketing and sales are becoming a bit more sexy. And I think people are starting to understand and appreciate the people who are skilled at this, the people who do have these skills. They're starting to appreciate these people a lot more. And I think I'm from the marketing side and you on the sales side, and the people who don't know, and I'm just going to introduce this to everybody and just say it, like we had a little bit of a business venture on the side. And I mean, that's how we got to know each other. You walked into the gym one day and asked me how I got my guns so big. And we started a conversation. That's not really what he asked, but essentially what happened was we became, well acquainted. And I was always naturally good at marketing, and you've always been naturally good at sales. And we started a little venture together, and that took off quite well before we obviously sold that to somebody. So from our side, I think that's one of the reasons marketing and sales goes hand in hand. And on this podcast, we talk about marketing a lot. And today, I specifically want to focus on sales. So from your side, we know obviously that you're quite good at it. Tell me a little bit more about the background as you got into the sales industry. I know you worked at a startup in Israel. Tell us a little bit about that and how that went.
Yeah, it was outstanding. Actually, I moved to Israel with my wife. It was about 4 years ago, a little bit more. And I got stuck into a startup quite early on. There was about 8 or 10 of us. And very interesting. I mean, it was the first 4 or 5 years ago, guys weren't using CRMs. They never knew much about their funnels. They were just social media. I mean, it was there. But it was still getting going, at least from our side, from South Africa. And we got stuck in quite quickly, and I started learning. This was obviously a SaaS startup, so in the software startup space, software as a service, and I started learning a lot about the funnel, a lot about understanding the funnel, understanding, forecasting, understanding your pipeline, and I think that's key to leading any sales team: understanding the pipeline, having transparency of the pipeline, and being able to scale that pipeline. So as I kind of got into the startup role, I actually started on the phones as a cold caller, which is interesting. Cold calling is the greatest breeding ground for any sales professional.
I can imagine. You
can kind of call yourself a professional after you spend a year on the phones.
And if you've been successful, yeah.
Exactly. And you learn a lot because, how many calls do you take a day that you put down straight away? So if you're doing that for your job, you get, you go all in on that. So we started on the phones. We had a small team. We were just trying to get guys interested, booking meetings, trying to get some meetings on the board. And I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about empathy, a lot about understanding people's objections, how to counter objections. And that kind of set me up a little bit more. I knew how to sell, but that kind of sharpened me because of the volume. And I would say that kind of continues to form me, and I continue to grow on those skills that I learned.
Yeah, I remember you came back, and we touched base, and we had just a catch up as friends. And I remember you showed me, the extensive, all these features of Salesforce, and that was back when I was all in on marketing, and I didn't necessarily understand the sales process that much. 5, 6, 7 years ago, I think that was quite a while ago already.
Yeah.
And I remember all the stuff that you guys were doing in terms of the CRM system and whatnot. And that's kind of like when my eyes started opening in terms of, the sales processes, the sales cycle, understanding that funnel, staying on top of mind in terms of catching up with the business owner. Hey, how's it going? I'm just checking in. Because a lot of times when you're working with higher ticket items, and that's what you guys sold. I mean, you sold high ticket software development. I can't remember exactly, but you're going to tell us now exactly what it was. But essentially, I remember you were selling high ticket items, and a lot of times people are not necessarily in a position to convert right now. So essentially, you have to kind of like keep nurturing that business owner or that decision maker and stay top of mind, so that the moment that they are ready, that you're the first person they think of, and you're the first person that they call, in order to do the job for them. So I think in essence, talking about your experience in that startup, what was the company called?
So it was called Graduate.
Graduate?
Yeah, it was a networking platform, exclusive networking platform for universities, schools throughout North America, and then the rest of the world as we kind of got into it. But yeah, as you touched on there rightly so, I mean, we're attempting to sell at, to quite expensive. The deals were quite a lot. The ARR, the annual recurring revenue, was quite high.
Yeah.
And there were long sales cycles, so you had to kind of keep engaged for long periods of time, even when you were cold calling to try to keep your prospects.
What was the average sales cycle, just out of interest?
So it ranged, I mean, anywhere from 3 months to a year plus.
Yeah.
Where as a cold caller you'd have to be quite engaged with them and keeping that interest. Initially, as I said before, you'd be booking calls for these guys who were what I call ideal customer profile, someone who fits your solution, fits their kind of needs. So I solve these 3 problems for this type of buying persona or this type of customer. And at that stage, I mean, I'll run through it very quickly, but at that stage we were selling to alumni professionals, alumni relations manager, alumni relations directors, and anyone who had the word alumni in their kind of title, we would target. And we would go after these guys because we knew that an alumni relations manager or director needed to keep his alums engaged or alumni engaged.
Yes.
And we needed to get these guys, we could help them stay more engaged, ultimately giving them more return from the alumni. They would end up giving more money back to the institution. So we knew we had a problem we could solve. We knew we were quite early because the market wasn't so ready. These guys that were using, Facebook groups, things like that.
To connect with everybody.
Correct, and Google Forms and things like that. So we knew what the status quo was, which the status quo is the as-is state. We knew the as-is state at the time was Facebook free generally. So we were trying to put, we had to work out the gap between the as-is state and the future state that we kind of saw and what value we could put against that. And we kind of, once we started understanding the value they were bringing with that, these alumni, how much money they were paying in and how much more connected they were, we upped our prices and we grew, and eventually the company sold.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, it was eventually sold to somebody. I remember there were talks with LinkedIn, actually. Was that correct? Like at some point?
But there were, I don't remember the exact details. It was sold to a venture capital firm. I moved on.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, that kind of growth in a startup. And I think Israel is one of the tech hubs at the moment. Tel Aviv, is it? That I think is one of the tech hubs right now. It's almost the second Silicon Valley. So there's so many.
I like to call it the first Silicon Valley. But exactly what you said. Israel has got a strong military base. A lot of guys in the military and a lot of developers. So they breed off those.
Yeah.
And there's one, I'm not going to run on Israel now, but there's one kind of trend that I've seen Israeli founders and and they're super passionate.
They are.
Super. And that, if you just keep going on that passion,
it's inevitable that you will end up with some success.
100%. And I think showing up is a lot of it. And that's why, if we have to start talking about millennials, I'm very passionate about millennials as leaders.
Yeah.
Because of their passion.
Getting goosebumps. Look, it's real.
Well, the truth is, so millennials, if you think of millennials, I'll just touch on this briefly. I don't want to take you off traffic. But millennials, if you look at the big rallies in the world, look at the US, the big rallies are done on a university level. The university students are starting these big rallies, which are turning into big things. I'm not saying rallies are correct, or I'm not saying, but these guys are doers. They go out there and they show up every day and they show up and that's why they're good leaders. That's why they're good business professionals. And as much as people, millennials, there's a lot of talk about them. I think they show up.
Mm. You know what? It's putting them in the right environment. I'm a millennial, like you are a millennial technically, and I think essentially it's about giving them the right environment to do what they want to do, and then, and excuse my French, but then amazing shit happens.
Exactly.
So after that, obviously you moved to ATG. This is and that's obviously where you're the head of sales right now, and you guys have had enormous growth over the last couple of years. I remember you starting there 2-3 years ago. Was still technically early startup. Couple of bucks in the bank, and it was growing. Now it's an actual serious business, and it's going really well. So tell us a little bit about the growth of ATG, and then we're going to talk about like the sales processes and maybe all the kind of stuff that you guys have implemented. That's obviously, to some extent accounted for that growth.
Yeah. The first thing is when I found ATG, I realized I was super passionate about what ATG was doing, and that's key. I realized that I was passionate about the problems we were solving, about the industry, and that's key. Before you've got to be passionate about.
Well, let's touch on that. Like, what is ATG doing right now, and what is the core focus, and what problem are you guys trying to solve? Yeah.
ATG, I'll give you the just to create some context. And then I'll explain to you what it does for different environments. But if you go to any office parks, you guys would know it off office parks, but if you go to any gated community, office park, residential estate, you would see a guy with a scanner there. And that scanner essentially scans your driver's licenses, the guys you probably don't like. And so that's what we do. We provide the software and the hardware for those scanners. Essentially, the core of the business is creating a transparency at your access. And we've got multiple competitors in the market. We're in a very, very competitive market, which is awesome to play in. And we don't sell a commodity. And our competitors sell commodities, a lot of them. And we play in this space. We've got clients, the likes of Mines, big corporates, multinationals. And we sign up quite a fair amount of clients. Because we don't trade a commodity. We find a problem. We don't find problems. We understand people's current as-is state. I would go into a demo, or my sales team would go into a demo, understand the current state. Where's the prospect at? You don't need to buy from me, but potentially these are problems we solve. If you've got these problems, it might be worth having a bigger discussion. So we don't force things. We lean back and we sell.
No pressure tactics.
No pressure, no oil, like you had mentioned.
Yeah.
And essentially, so that's what we do. Our core business is creating transparency of access points. More recently with COVID, which is super contextual right now. We COVID screen. We got features that can COVID screen. If I think of some of the sites like a Mine, for example, would be recording on our device. They would be recording every transporter that comes in. They would be getting daily reports on how many trucks have been there, the SLA times, what the truck weighed, things like that. Where a residential estate will just be screening, entry and exit for visitors. So that, there's obviously, we play in different spaces, but the core focus is creating transparency at access points. That's our core mission. It's what we do. And if if I had to say to you today, I'll just end on this. Who's currently on your site right now? If you're thinking a big site, I know we're in Sandton at the moment, think of an office park down the road. Who's currently on site? If you had to ask the estate manager or the site manager, you're going to run to the book and try work that out. If you had an incident last week, Tuesday, he's going to go through the book and try work that out. So those are the problems we solve.
Automating the data capturing that obviously goes with that, and securing that data.
And alerting on it,
Yeah, 100%. And talking about the growth of ATG, you came in, there were no, from what I understand, I don't think there was a lot of sales systems in place. There weren't necessarily any, I don't think you guys were really using a CRM or anything like that. So from my side, I think I want to start at the bottom and and go through, what exactly changed since you've joined ATG. Obviously, the growth of the company has contributed to a lot of different factors. Obviously, good leadership, good staff. But I think it's obviously, I think it's clear that obviously sales processes do make a massive difference. So with that said, what happened on day one, on day 90, in year one, exactly what changed, and essentially what contributed to the growth that you guys have experienced over the last 2-3 years, specifically in the context of sales and sales processes?
Yeah, look, the key to coming into a sales team and managing people, first of all, managing people, is you've got to trust them. And that was the key. Coming into the team, we had a lot of top salespeople. We needed to back them. We needed to allow them to kind of do their thing with a bit of control, but back them and be there for them, which is big. Trust is big. It really is. If you've got a team out there and you've got a staff under you, you got to have their back, and they got to know it. And I think that's key. It really is key. So that's the first thing. And then just understanding, without making any big changes first off the bat, as you said, just understanding where we're at, what's happening on the ground. I was going into meetings every day from a site with one security guard and 7 units, and going there with a sales rep and just understanding what's going on there. What kind of problems is he facing? And to some big sites, big corporates, big mines. Spent some time in Kenya, in Namibia, Ghana, just understanding some of the guys we were selling to and some of our buyers, and understanding if they are buyers, if they get value out of our product. And then once I started understanding who we're selling to, what the guys are doing with our software, how it's affecting their day-to-day life, is it making them, I think you use the swear word, I don't know if I can, but
you're always welcome to.
Is it helping them kick more ass?
Yeah.
Are they actually doing better with our software? Is it changing their day? These guys, an estate manager, what kind of reports does he have to send to his boss? Logistics manager, what does he need to send to his boss? So I needed to understand that. And I spent a long time understanding that and understanding the problems we solve. Is it a nice to have, or are we making a difference to their lives? And once I started understanding the problems, I started understanding the guys we should hone in on and double down on. And that was key. Understanding our customers, who they are. In our specific case, we sell a lot to the channel, which is not directly to end users. We sell a lot to resellers. And I started understanding we've got to go all in on resellers. They've got reach. We've got to work out how to engage with these people, how to make it valuable for them. How can they make money out of us? What do these resellers want from a supplier? Do they want us to implement and not hear about it again? So when I started understanding a bit about the resellers, a bit about the channel that we're selling to, a bit about the clients, I started understanding who we should focus on and what we should do to them. So that was on the strategy side. I'm not a strategist at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I'm actually against strategy. Not against strategy, but I'm not a strategist. I want to see what's happening on the ground.
It's all about the actual practical implementation. I suppose a lot of times we fixate on strategy, we get romantic about strategy, and we're like, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and this is how it's going to work. But that's all theory until you actually get to the practical side. And I think that's what you're more the practical guy. Like, let's just go out and do shit versus, have everything drawn up on paper and all these beautiful schematics.
Well, correct. But the one thing is, on that point, is you've got to understand what's happening right now.
Yeah.
What's happening today, and what's happening on the ground, and then you can understand trying to fix things. We've stayed super flexible from a process point of view, from a pitch point of view. Initially, my initial plan was to kind of get set pitches, set cold calling pitches, set outreach pitches, set emails, and I tanked that. I sat down with a team, I still do every month. One-on-ones, I have pipeline reviews, which I'll run you through, but I sit down as a group with a team and I discuss, and I keep discussing the same things, which are key to our process. And I want to touch on the CRM side, which is very important, and the whole funnel itself. But these things, just to give some context on the flow and what needs to happen. A lot of people, for example, I'll just say in emails, people send spray and pray emails all day, every day. Most salespeople do this. And that's
I think everybody gets them on a daily, right?
And this gives us a bad rap. This gives me a bad rap. This gives my team a bad rap. When my competitor sends a spray and pray email, my sales rep's email doesn't get opened. And and the worse it kind of gets. That's why their spam filters are improving. So we had to understand. I had to tell these guys, let's just lean back when we sell, and it's key. We're not salesy. We're not happy. We lean back. We understand if there's a problem, we can solve it. If you're not ready to solve it, we don't create some urgency. We're more about just understanding the problem, if you're ready to solve it right now or not. And that's what we do, and especially with our channel and our resellers, we keep doing that. So I touched on emails. Most people just send these long-winded emails. I mean, if you were playing chess, let's talk about a negotiation, but if you were playing chess, would you put your next 7 moves in an email? You wouldn't. You'd put one move, wait for them to come back to you.
Exactly.
And that's the way I see it. Less is more when it comes to it. So we put a lot of that thinking into play, where we lean back when we sell. We're not over pushy. We understand who we are in the market, and that's key. We understand our product. We understand the value. If you're not interested in seeing me or buying my product, that's great, because you're obviously managing with what you're doing, and that's cool. I'm happy. I don't solve your problem. It's going to fail down the line.
Yeah.
And we move on.
You talked about coming in, trusting, everybody in the business, staff members, identifying who you want to sell to, finding that ideal buyer. And those are the 2 tips that you've provided so far. And then obviously you've started touching on the CRM side. So let's talk about the CRM side, because I think that's one of the things that weren't in place when, that wasn't in place when you started there. I'm a big, and I'm just going to give you some context to why it's a passionate thing, a really passionate thing for me, is just purely because we work with a lot of small to medium-sized business owners, and a lot of them do sell, to other businesses. So they are in the B2B industry, or a lot of them sell high-ticket items. What happens is that they don't have a CRM in place. They don't know how to follow up. They don't have, sometimes if they do it on an Excel spreadsheet, where they'd say, look, this person came through, they're interested, they send them a mail, and then they just wait for that person to come back to them. They don't necessarily think about whether the email was in a spam folder, whether the person might have just, not seen that email, whether the person was too busy and forgot about it. There's so many variables that is obviously taking up the attention, of the decision maker who you're trying to target. He's got so many things to do in a 24-hour period. And, unless the solution that you're selling is a real massive pain point right now that he's trying to solve immediately, if that's not necessarily the case, you need to kind of be in touch, stay on top of mind, keep adding value, and essentially you have to present an offer that they, essentially can't necessarily refuse, and that obviously screams value, because a sale only happens if value exceeds price, right? A sale won't happen if it was the other way around. Essentially, if the price exceeded the value, nothing's going to happen. So touching on the CRM and really, what a difference that's made, and essentially how you manage that CRM, and also in terms of follow-ups and emails, and walk us through that. I'm very curious to understand that process.
So as you touched on there, another key factor was understanding the pipeline of the sales team. Understanding what's actually happening on the ground, and are the sales team focusing on things that will make them more money and make the company more money. Whenever I talk to the sales team, it's, sales guys generally are after money. I'm not saying that's the best salespeople. I've seen a lot of successful salespeople are hungry for money. It's not the best, but as long as they understand that I want them to make more money, I'm going to help them make more money. I want them to buy that Porsche. I want them to go, on holidays. I push them to do it. And just like I want to do it for myself, I want them to do it. And they know that. They really do. I'm very open about it. Understanding what their goals are, what do they want. Got sales reps traveling around the world, sales reps driving nicer cars than the CEOs. That's cool. and I'm cool with that, and I agree with it. But so those are key things. But I think if they know that I want them to make them more money, we've got to understand that they've got to be spending time on things that will make them more money. So if we talk about the pipeline, and a big part of this was the message we were portraying and the marketing side, which I'll touch on, but the pipeline. So what I set up from the beginning was to do a pipeline review once a week with each salesperson. It's 20 minutes. It's got a set agenda. It's on the calendar. Monday, generally, I run through the pipelines. And I look at the stages of of the CRM that we've set up. We're using Pipedrive currently.
Okay.
I've looked at others. Pipedrive works for us. But I go through the funnel and I start from who are their leads, how many leads are currently in, and what is the aging on these leads that are sitting in the pipeline. Is progress happening or not? If not, get them off the pipeline. The pipeline's a living funnel of what you're doing today, what you're doing tomorrow, what you're currently working on. If I look at your pipeline, I want to see exactly what you're working on. It should give me a transparency of what you're doing. And it's got to stay like that. As soon as you start hoarding things, it's over. So first line was the lead-in stage. How many leads are you getting into your pipeline? How many new leads? And are these leads our customers that we touched on, our deal customer profile? And that's the first stage. And it's not a complicated pipeline. It kind of goes from lead-in into a discovery call, which is key because the discovery is generally when you understand if you can solve a problem or not. And if you can't solve their problem or the discovery criteria don't fit what I call an opportunity, which I'll touch on, then there's no point moving it down the funnel. Mm-hmm. So we talk lead-in, we talk discovery call. From there on, it goes to something which is called an opportunity. And what an opportunity means, there's opportunity to do business. It's clear. Clear as it sounds, it's an opportunity. In my mind, I set clear criteria on what an opportunity is. But an opportunity is someone who there's opportunity to do business with. It's not a kind of fuzzy feeling that there's opportunity. It's not like we're interested, they ask for a quotation. It's not an opportunity. An opportunity is they've got a problem, I can solve it.
They have the budget and they in the right industry. And
yeah, well, budget's a difficult one at that stage because
I can imagine.
Yeah, because they haven't really seen your solution. So the budget's a bit hard there. I don't always qualify, those criteria don't always come into it, but I trust my reps on a gentleman's shake a lot. And if they say there's an opportunity to do business, then it's clear between me and you, you're going to spend time on it. I'm happy for you to spend time on it. But if you've got a government agency, I'm not saying that government's, but they might be a longer sales cycle, and I don't want a top salesperson spending 3 weeks and 3 hours a day driving into, to sit with government, which may not come through unless there's an opportunity there, and then I'd kick it off their pipeline. So we talk about leads, we talk about discovery call, then it turns into an opportunity. Any opportunity means that there's an opportunity to do business, and then from there, there's obviously the meeting phase and onto awaiting closure. And nothing rots, nothing ages. That thing's a living, moving stage in terms of stages, and I go through that weekly to make sure that things are rolling on. And I've got to understand, if you ask me today how many deals we're going to put in this month, I know what's sitting in the awaiting closure, and I know the opportunities because I know from we've discussed with my sales team that that everything sitting in that column or in that stage is a clear opportunity to do business. There's a problem we solve, and there's a good chance a lot of those are going to come in at the end of this month or next month. So I know my pipeline, I've got a transparency of my pipeline. I go to sleep tonight feeling fantastic because I know what's coming in. And there's no guessing. It's clear to me that the opportunities have been vetted to some, if I can call it that, and they're coming in to close. There's obviously along the way, competitors come in, deals fall off, there's COVID, there's things like that which come into play. But if I've got a strong pipeline and all my salespeople have got strong pipelines, we'll hit our numbers. And that's what's kind of happened, and we've doubled down on it. We've added to the team, we've added members, added regions, and we continue to do so because we've got deals coming in and the pipeline's transparent. It's clear. It's clear.
You see, I see that the pipeline is food on the table. So, I mean, it's kind of like a little bit of an analogy that I have is essentially that, leads are technically the oxygen of a business, because without leads, where are you going to get the food from? And, once those leads come in, it's literally like food on the table. And I think a lot of small to medium-sized businesses do not understand the power of a CRM or some form of sales automation processes that can notify you saying follow up on that quote, book a meeting, book a call, whatever it is, moving people through the processes with that funnel that we've talked about. And what happens is that, and I see it often happen to myself, if you're trying to project what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 months, on a top level, just top of mind, I'm like, okay, we have some of these deals on the table, and then you get a little bit anxious because there's so many other things that you've forgotten about, so many other opportunities. And I think when I go back to the pipeline, immediately I feel a little bit more comfortable because I know there's a lot of other people I can call on, have already expressed interests in these opportunities that we can, just keep on nurturing.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes if you don't have that CRM, you forget that you have all this food on the table. And what happens is that you go and try and find new sources of food. And, you start re-engineering, where can I get more leads from? But essentially you've got all these leads already in your system that you just need to nurture and take care of. And if you didn't have that system in place, that automation in place, then to some extent you would forget about that, neglect them, and always try and chase the freshest deal, which is not necessarily the case.
100%. And it's not a perfect world. I've got these sitting in my pipelines, and we've got these also. We obviously, continue to work on it, but we've got those issues. I do think that the pipeline, as you said before, is kind of the line to, you bring in business. So you've got a prospect on paper, and you just bring them into your ecosystem, as you said, through marketing, which is critical. If you've got a marketing strategy without a pipeline, you're leaving food on the table. And if you're bringing guys into your ecosystem and you're not kind of bringing them to close, you kind of you're losing credibility, you're killing your trust. And I see this a lot, and I've seen this before, where you've got guys who are good prospects and good suited for the problems you solve, and you just don't treat them correctly. You don't nurture them, as you touched on, and that's key. There's a million reasons why a prospect would go with a certain company. The guy may have driven into the rep may have driven in and had blonde hair. The prospect never liked blonde hair. The rep may have driven in and hit the curb, and the prospect may have hated that. So there's a million reasons why that aren't in your control. So if you just focus on the things that you kind of can manage and forget about the rest, and what I said before, the empathy, the leaning back. My sales reps don't walk in there and vomit features or slouch. We're talking professional. We're talking problems we solve. My sales reps, they top class individuals. They solve problems, and they're professional. It's not you're not doing me a favor to sit with me.
It's almost like they're confident that they have the backing of a good product and a good system behind them. So it's essentially like walking in there knowing that the value that you can add. And I think that it's very, Jordan Belfort, like I think everybody knows the Wolf of Wall Street, who's a born and bred salesperson. It's in his blood. And I think essentially, he taught his sales team, like 10 people at Stratton Altmar. He taught them a straight lines persuasion sales system. And what he was talking about there is like, they have such a good strategy that as a salesperson, you become confident in this strategy. So you walk into, not that they did a lot of, personal meetings, but if you did, you walk in professional, confident, and that the problem that you can solve, and the value that you can add. If you as a business owner don't want that, I respect it, and I shake your hand and I say thanks, and we, see each other around. And I think it's so crucial because a lot of people come in and they actually seem desperate. You can smell the fact that they're desperate from a mile away, and they try everything.
I call it commission breath.
Commission breath.
Yeah.
I like that.
People smell commission breath. They know when you're being sold to. So if I've got your best interests above mine, meaning if I actually want to solve the problem above me making the commission, I'm only going to go in there if it makes sense to solve the problem. And that's commission breath's key, because when you lean back and you sell, I'm not trying to sell you. I'm a professional. I've got a million people I can sell to. People want to buy my product, and I'm giving you the opportunity to see that I can solve your problem. And when a prospect understands that, there's an understanding of seriousness, there's an understanding of time wasting, there's understanding that you're dealing with a professional individual. And I go into meetings with some of my sales team. I had quite a big meeting yesterday, and we run an agenda, a strict agenda to a demo. I don't go into a 20-minute slide pitch and feature vomit. quick understanding. I say it very, very thorough, very quickly. There's nothing personal about this. If it doesn't make sense, just don't log off. I said to the guy, just don't log off the Zoom call in the middle. Rather say cheers if it doesn't suit you.
Hundreds.
Because I actually believe, I don't want to waste his time. He doesn't waste my time. We go in there, we got a strict agenda, no pitches, very, very high level in terms of the problems we're solving. And if it looks like problems that he's got or he's facing, fantastic.
Yeah.
If not, then not.
And if you realize that 15 minutes into the meeting, then tell us, and we'll shake hands and leave. No, that's awesome, man. I think we probably need a lot more salespeople like that, because I think a lot of people endure that hour Zoom call or whatever, even if they know that they're not. You know how many times I've seen it happens in the office, and I think we have some nice people in the office, so you can hear when someone is getting cold call in the middle of the day, and they're just like, "Thank you, no, yeah, yes, I've got time." Okay, thanks. And then I know immediately, like Melissa or TJ or whoever it is, is already annoyed with this person, but they're such nice people, so they endure the 10, 20 minutes of a sales pitch. And they go, "No, thank you, I'm not interested," afterwards. As opposed to going, "Look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I'm saving you time because ideally, as a company, you've got 15, 20, 30 minutes extra to go and do admin or whatever it is. And ideally, I think it's about being transparent with the business owner. Like you're saying, commission breath. That's, people do smell that a mile away, and that immediately just puts them on the back foot.
Yeah, they freeze. And just on that point, on the calling side, there's so many tips. I can say so many things around the negotiation side and around cold calling specifically, and not assuming you solve problems, which is what cold callers generally do. I'm calling from this company and we do this. I'm not assuming that you solve my problem when I call you. I'm saying we do this for similar people like you. Things like that. Little subtle things like that which can make a massive difference.
Yeah, there's other people in the space that's been using the service and it's been working for them.
And not assuming. I'm not assuming I solve your problem. And if someone actually objects like that, I would say, I hope you never thought I was assuming that I can solve your problem. I don't even know what your problem is. And I'd hate to waste your time thinking that, that I can solve it. I don't know what it is. If you're open to give me a few minutes to understand, we generally solve problems like this for people like you. Give me would you be open to a few minutes? And yeah, they generally, that's pretty straight up. I'll say to a guy, I don't know if Chris Voss,
yes,
FBI ex-negotiator.
Never split the difference.
Yeah. So he's got a sign which is go for no. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Or not a sign, a big part of his...
Yeah, I read the book, but I can't obviously remember everything, yeah?
So he always goes for no. He wants to hear no.
Oh, yes, because that can guide you down the actual route to getting to the yes.
Correct. And no also puts comfort with the prospect. So if you go for no always, he's got a few different tactics, but the big one is no. And if I say to you, ask your question and I want you to say no, you will feel comfortable and in control. Very basically, if I say to you, is it a good time to talk? And you say yes. Do I want to talk what you want to speak about? Do I know what you want to talk about? You're being steered somewhere. So rather say, in that case, you rather say, is it a bad time to talk? And then prospect says, no, it's a good time.
Yeah, or it's fine. I can make a few minutes.
And he's in control, and he feels in control because he's called the shot. And those little things, yeah.
Psychologically, it makes a massive difference, I suppose, yeah.
And it's like compound interest in the sales process because...
Yeah. It's those micro wins that you need in the sales process, continuously making them feel obviously like they're in control of the situation, even though they are, but that's what you want. You want them to have some sense of control and also be in control to some extent.
Yep.
And if the solution fits, then obviously there's business to be done, which is great. In terms of automation, so we touched on the CRM. Do you guys believe in automation? Is it something that you guys focus on a lot? Is there automation in the sales process? If so, can you share an example? Just purely because it's something I'm very passionate about, because I'm all about efficiency. I hate any manual things that needs to be done. I always try and eliminate human error. People get tired, people get distracted. So essentially, always trying to automate as much as possible. Is there anything specifically that you can think of currently? That's helped in terms of automation.
So automation is an interesting one because as you automate at scale, you lose personalization.
True.
But on that point, there are multiple companies out there which work with automation and we use. But the key automations for us, I mean, as I said to you before, spraying and praying doesn't work. And people do this all day, every day, where they splash out, spraying and praying, and they think it's working. And it's killing trust. They may get 1 or 2 bites, but it's killing trust, it's killing credibility. Have this all day. I mean, just before on the automation, if you don't mind me touching on this point, one of the things we've done, and together with V8 actually creating leads into our funnel, was we replace manual registers at access points in our business, creating that transparency. And one of the things we did was through V8 we created a free download of a manual register, and we ran ads against it. And we were saying to our prospects, if you're not ready to come to us, we're giving you a free register to use, which will still get you from A to B. It may not do it great, but it gets you from A to B, and that's cool. And we're happy with that, and we've done that, and it was very successful, and we continue to do things. I mean, if I think of COVID, we've done a manual COVID screening register, which we screen electronically. So why would we be giving free registers to our prospect? But my prospect may not be ready to buy.
So you want to add that value.
Correct. And it's not about me. It's about him solving problems. And as soon as I put him in the middle of it at scale, then you really take it up a notch. But on the automation side, a lot of the marketing side of it's been very, very geared towards the correct messages to the correct people, and then bring the leads into our funnel, responding to them. Obviously, there's some automation in there. With Pipedrive, it's got its own automation. So that, for example, if you move a deal into a certain stage, like that you've just met them. I'm not overkill on stages. I really don't want to overcomplicate it. But when you move a deal into having met them, a template it will automatically send them an email, which is quite personalized per industry. And we've touched on that kind of automation. We've touched a bit on follow-up emails. I haven't integrated things like giving gifts, although those are manual processes that I do. Big into gifts, whether it's writing a handwritten note. There's a lot of value in that.
For sure.
And I hope to automate those processes as I kind of, as I kind of move on from certain processes that we're fixing. But the big thing for me, I know it's not really on automation, is the intent of the salesperson. If the salespeople are showing up to play every single day, you in a good place. You really are. If they're showing up with the right messages and showing up to play in front of the right audience, you're 10 steps ahead. So showing up to play and that intent is key. You
were talking about the personalization. At V8 here, we basically now sending to all our clients who's been with us for a while, and through COVID, we're just sending little thank you gifts, and it literally we're just saying thank you for supporting us through this difficult time, because they could have easily chosen not to. I think a lot of companies could have just they could have just went with a lights on strategy where you pause your marketing. And a lot of them obviously understand the value of, the underpriced attention that was up for grabs, but yet we feel like, we're thankful for that. So you guys might actually get something. But I mean, there's obviously certain companies from our side that we are planning on just saying little gifts to, handwritten notes saying thank you so much for the support. And I think there was a book called Never Lose a Customer Again, which actually spoke about don't send gifts or cards on birthdays because it's almost expected. You wanna personalize it in a way where it's sent unexpectedly, because people remember when it's unexpected. And one thing I thought about was specifically the situation that we've gone through as an agency. Luckily, we've pulled through. A lot of companies in the same industry closed down. But we're grateful for the fact that we were able to survive, and even though we did lose some revenue, we still managed to scrape through on our knees and elbows, and everybody is still safe and nobody's on the street, and we actually probably now where we were before lockdown. But essentially what it comes down to is just saying thank you for everybody who supported us through this difficult time. And I definitely believe in that, and I think it's a big thing. So never lose a customer again. I can't remember the author of the book, but it was literally like 60 things that you can do to keep people happy from the onboarding process all the way through to being an existing client for years, was really, really cool, and was a very interesting read.
I think the key there is you've got to have the processes, and you've got to be able to have the teams to engage with the customers, whether post-sale, pre-sale, all of that. But the key line you touched on there is the empathy. And it's the genuine empathy. It's I'm genuinely curious, and I'm genuinely, caring for you. And there's a certain genuine to, I can't touch on it, but if I want to portray that, and I want that to be, it's a feeling. And if you can really make that feeling to your customers, and it's true. I genuinely care. And when I go into a demo and I'm very expressive and very passionate, I genuinely care for your problem. And the same with every gift I give and every part. And I think that's what you're touching on. And it's very powerful, that the genuine caring, it's putting your customers before you.
It's a real relationship. I think that's exactly what it is. And I think a lot of times people see business as a transaction. And of course it is to some extent, but we see it as true relationships. We got to make mistakes as an agency. And I think because we care a lot, you understand the fact that we're not doing it intentionally. And if we do make a mistake, people know that usually it comes from a good place as well. And from our side, I think the key to making the mistake and not getting fired, is having that empathy from the bat, and essentially having the customer understand that, like you've mentioned now, you really do care about their business. And obviously we're all human, so we are going to make mistakes, but it's a relationship. So sometimes we'll lose, sometimes we'll win. But if we can look back in the last 6 months or a year and look at the progress that we've made as a partnership, then obviously everybody wins.
Yeah.
So I think that's key for us, is to treat every single, customer technically, or a client, as a real partner of the business, and essentially have those relationships with those business owners. But yeah, so you've touched on that, and I think from a marketing perspective, you said now a couple of times, it's crucial to have the sales processes in place. And from a marketing perspective, you guys being in the business to business industry specifically, obviously we, as a full disclosure, we help you with the marketing, and we do, the AdWords and the LinkedIn and a couple of other things for you guys, and we advise and help strategize where necessary. But essentially, what do you think has played the biggest role in terms of marketing? From my perspective, I do believe that the AdWords and the LinkedIn has contributed. But is there anything specific? If that's so, we can elaborate on that specifically a little bit as well. But from the marketing side, anything that comes to mind, and anything that you think has made a massive difference in the last 12 months or so?
Yeah, just before the V8 side of it, first of all, you've got to find an agency that understands your business, understands your clients, and your agency, they've got to understand it. Because if they're sending out the generic stuff, it's not going to work. So V8 from our side, we've used multiple agencies before V8 came along, and we're spending a lot of money there. But I think since I'll touch on V8 because that's kind of where I've been involved from a marketing side, and marketing and sales go hand in hand. I look after the marketing side also. I want to make sure that I'm bringing opportunities and creating interest for my sales team, and it's part of my right. It's part of, I'm trying to help them, and I'm going to do my best to bring them, and I put a lot into that, even if it means from a budgetary point of view fighting with my CEO and trying to make sure I've got budget, because I want my sales team to make money. I want them to drive those nice cars, as I said. But from a marketing side, so the big things that we've touched on is the right messaging. V8, as I said before, has helped us just understand the messaging, what type of messaging we want to send to our customers, and that's been key in terms of if you send the wrong stuff to them, or you don't portray things that actually affect them, or you think they affect them, you're wasting money. So that's been key, and then finding them in their places. I know since we've used V8, we're getting, from a lead point of view, we're getting quite a lot of leads. I can touch on the numbers. It's definitely gone up like this as we've started understanding our our customers better, and the flexibility. And the big thing from the marketing side is the messaging that we're putting through. So we're putting through that messaging, and then the platforms where to find them. We've done Facebook now big time, where we never used to do it in a B2B space, but we're finding our buyers there. Prospects. We've done a lot of LinkedIn, very targeted ads, where we've had a lot of success from, because of the titles that we're chasing, or the titles that we sell to. We know who we're looking for. And then on the video side of it also, we've done a lot of videos, or multiple videos that we've run against our customers. So I think that strategy, you got your agency, you got your sales process, your sales team, and you've got to work very closely in terms of the flexibility. And that's a big thing that we've done with V8 also, is being very flexible on what we're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes I personally make V8 quite mad, because we're changing AdWords, we're changing targets, we're changing images, we're pulling down, we're pushing up, we're doubling down on things that are working, we're creating new content, we're creating videos, and we're constantly changing. We're flexible with it, but I'm certainly not holding back on marketing, because my customers want to hear from me now, and when we get through this, I'll be much closer to my customer than my competitor, because I've been in touch with my customer on a broader space. I've been in touch with my prospects. My prospects understand me. So we've really gone all in on that. But you've got to be close with your agency. They've got to understand your business. You've got to help them understand your business.
True.
Which is also a big problem. And you've got to understand that from an agency point of view, they're not magicians.
Yeah. It's not a silver bullet, right?
Exactly.
It takes time.
And you've got to help them do that. And if you don't, you can't think that you're just going to get tons and tons of leads, and the perfect leads, and no Gmail leads, and all that kind of stuff, because you're not helping them help you succeed. But you've got to have the right agency. They've got to have the right mindset. They've got to have the latest, they've got to know what's happening around. And I think that's what we've had from V8. We've had as I said before, massive success in the video space. Videos, obviously, people are watching more videos than they've ever watched. Their time frames, they can't really pay that much attention, so we've changed to
especially when it comes to explaining the products, right? And I think, just to touch on a couple of things, I didn't want to interrupt you, but from what I'm hearing you say, and I definitely agree with it, is that the first thing we got right was the messaging, and the ads that we created started resonating with people. And I think you said this earlier, salespeople traditionally would walk into a meeting and then just vomit out features. And those features don't necessarily always make sense, because the person on the other side of the table don't necessarily understand those features and how it's contextual to the problem that he's trying to solve. And, that's where benefits come in. And I know, a lot of sales thought leaders and a lot of people believe in talking about the benefits and the real solutions and the pain points that you're solving. And I think for us, our relationship is about more than a year now. So it's about 18 months, I think. And I think now at a point where it feels like, we can truly actually see what the impact of marketing and obviously getting your marketing aligned with your sales team, what those impacts can look like, what those processes can look like when you actually get the two working synergistically together.
Yeah, that's key. I actually missed that.
Yeah, and I think from our side, it's taken us obviously some time. It's not a silver bullet. It's taken us time to really understand the product, really understand the messaging of the ads, really understand the core solutions. And I think in the beginning, I remember you explaining the product to the team and to me, and we were like, we understand it, but we understood it on a surface level. We didn't necessarily understand the real pain points of the business owner and what keeps them up at night. We didn't understand why they lying awake at night. So we understood the solution on a top level, but I didn't necessarily experience that empathy for the business owner lying awake, stressing about getting sued in some way, shape, or form, not having the evidence to prove that this guy was there or this guy wasn't there, or whatever the case may be. And I think from our side as a team, like you've said, it does take time, and once that starts happening, it's basically just compounds. And you touched on Facebook, which I wanted to talk about, is like everybody that is usually on LinkedIn it's safe to say that there's a very high probability that they will also have a Facebook account. So one thing is, we never did Facebook because traditionally we also always believe that, people would be on LinkedIn if they want to do business. But one thing we've seen for our own agency is that the more data you generate, the better you can start reaching those people on Facebook. So Facebook is casting a wider net. So obviously, traditionally, some of the leads might not necessarily be as great, but it becomes a volume game. So it's about having the right pre-qualification processes in place that will eliminate, the weaker leads with the more qualified leads. And that's definitely made a difference for our business. And I think Facebook is slowly becoming a platform where businesses, can go and sell to other businesses just purely because the person who is on LinkedIn is also on Facebook. Sure, the psychological mindset might be a little bit different. He's there to escape and maybe catch up with the news and family and friends more so than he is there to further his business and his career. But if you're a business owner or a key decision maker, you switched on to business almost 90% of the time.
In 2020, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we forget about, that we don't necessarily think about, is that if you are, a C-suite executive, if you are a director of some sort in the business and you invested in the business, then even though you're on Facebook, your mindset is always switched to trying to further your career. And even though you're there to escape or not. And if you see an attractive offer, an attractive solution, or something that's going to help the organization, you're going to inquire, or you're going to click and you're going to learn more. And I think it's also the messaging on the platform, just necessarily not there necessarily to sell them the solution, but more just educate and entertain in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's something that a lot of companies sometimes tend to neglect. So I just wanted to drop that, which I think makes a big difference. So to round off, our little talk here, I think small to medium-sized business owners, we've got about 6,000 of them, and we're growing with 1,500 a month on the podcast. So keep in mind that a lot of them, are just starting out. Keep in mind that, some of them are probably, around 500 to $1 million a year. And I'm sure there's obviously bigger companies and more successful business owners at the moment in the podcast and listening to this. But I think keeping in mind that we're focusing on more smaller entities, is there certain short to the point nuggets that you can drop that we can conclude the podcast or today's recording with, essentially, like from a sales process and from a sales perspective, 2 or 3 or 4 things that you can round off with? And I think we've touched on a couple, but maybe some of the most important ones that you want to leave people with.
Sure. I actually wanted to touch on a point just before that from there's Salesforce, which we touched on, a unicorn in its own right and very successful. Just on one of their marketing things that changed, that hit me, and I think small business owners would appreciate it, is as COVID hit, they realized that they're getting decision makers on their calls. They realized decision makers are less invested in other activities. They're more invested in on-the-ground activities. And some of the things in terms of their messaging that they changed, they created at very high level instead of very granular. And I think it's very powerful in understanding your decision maker. And their numbers were incredible during COVID. A, their product suits COVID, but B, their messaging changed from being very granular when they've got like a sales manager looking at their product to a CEO looking at their product, very return on investment focused, and they changed it. And I think those are little things which if you keep doing, keep you above the rest, which is why it makes sense to be close to your agency and them understanding your problems. But on the few points, the first point is, and the hardest point to do, is you've got to show up, you've got to start, which is key for anything. Any business, any small business, most of the businesses fail right there. They don't start, or if they start, they half start. And that's a big thing. Showing up and starting is key. And that intent, and you've got to keep that intent up. But from a sales point of view, you've got to pick up the phones as quick as possible. People hate the phones. Get onto those phones. You've got to incorporate, you've got to try different things. And a big point to new business owners is there's trying and there's doing. If a sales rep of mine comes up to me and says they tried to get a hold of this prospect, I say, let me try. No, because there's trying and there's trying. Are you trying because there's 500,000 people looting 20 kilometers from here? If you have to understand, just to contextualize it, there are people who don't have food. Are you trying by having that thought in mind? And as a business owner, that's how you got to, as a small business owner, as a starter, in a startup phase, you've got to think like that. You've got to think, there's me going all in, or there's me not showing up. And that's why I touched on showing up. So from a trying point of view, you've got to get onto the phones. If someone doesn't answer, you've got to call again. You've got to try to get them on LinkedIn. You've got to try to get them on Facebook. You've got to try to get their number. And you've got to keep going. You've got to go all in until I get hold of that person. And when I speak to that person, I speak to him properly. I don't, and not salesy. You've got to do those things. But the key's starting, picking up those phones and making sure that you're not just trying, you're actually doing it. And that's, I can't stress that point enough. I see it in small businesses where we launch a new product and I say to the sales team, let's see if our prospects are interested in this. And we run some marketing, etc. And they say, no, they've tried. They don't want to do COVID screening at schools. They don't want to do this. There's trying and there's doing. Yeah. There's trying as if got to make it happen.
It's like sending one email, not getting a reply is just not good enough.
Yeah, and in this environment, never mind sending Gong.
Yes.
Gong.io is a...
They're also Tel Aviv. Are they from
Tel Aviv? Yeah, Tel Aviv based. Very powerful. They on this list to be a unicorn quite soon, I think. And one of the things, some of their data analytics platform using CRM data, and one of the things they came out with recently, I just wanted to touch on... I've gone blank on actually the exact point. But
was it the once a lead comes through the system? Was it because that's one of the stuff I wanted to chat about. I think there's stats that actually show that if a lead comes into your system and you wait, I think the best converting leads usually react within the first 2 hours, and then stats show that just obviously drops significantly. So if you have to wait 24 hours, the chance of converting that lead into a customer drops with 30%. After waiting 48 hours, it drops with 60%. So if you've waited 2 working days to contact that person, you've now got a 20% or 30% chance of closing that deal, if not less.
Correct. And so there is something in that also. As you said, Gong do have data on that. But the data I was mentioning was they're seeing you've got only after an 8th or 9th email do your reply rates actually pick up. And that's what I see, and that's what I think about intent and showing up. And that's key for any small business owner. If you show up consistently day in, day out, on the phones, whether it's on email, I'm in the game, I'm there, I'm present, I'm on the floor.
And the environment is so noisy, so you're going to have to do more. I think about it, there's WhatsApp notifications, there's text message notifications, there's LinkedIn, Facebook, there's Instagram, there is email, personal, business. The family's keeping you busy. So people are more distracted than ever. So you can't just send one email. So in the beginning, when we launched as a business, we just did pure lead gen. So it was we'll generate the leads and you convert the sale. And in the beginning, some companies did well because they had sophisticated sales process and was well documented and worked out and planned out. And then a lot of the smaller businesses said, the leads are weak, they're not good quality, the targeting is off. You're not giving us the right quality leads, whatever, and they would then leave. And I thought about it, and I said, look, if it's working for my business, if it's working for other businesses, we obviously know what we're doing. What can we fix? And I think it took me 2 months to realize these guys just don't know how to sell their own services. And it dates back to they're only sending one email. Hey, are you interested in our product or service? Here's what it costs. No real articulation, no real excitement. This is the product, this is the cost of it.
Yeah.
And they'll obviously get back to me when they're ready. And it just doesn't work like that, right?
No. If you do that, your competitor's going to beat you, because if you've got a competitor like me on the other side, or even someone who's generally going to make it happen, try and make it happen, you won't win. And I also think you, as a small business owner in these times, you've got to get on the ground and you've got to listen, start calling yourself, or start engaging with customers if you're not doing it right now. And you've got to get back in the trenches. And the massive opportunity you'll see opportunity in those trenches. That's why there's so much opportunity. I know we're running up quickly, but I could talk on this forever. That's why there's so much opportunity right now, because just as you had mentioned, your competitor has got a kid who's crying. He bumped his car just like you did. He's got a headache today just like you did. He wants to sleep till 9 just like you did. And if you don't do that, you beat him.
Yeah.
And if you do that consistently, you compound interest, because it just doubles up and you gain momentum. And I think that's why showing up is key, because, for example, this morning was freezing cold. I never want to go gym.
Yeah.
And I go in gym because showing up is 90% of it.
Yeah.
And I pick up the phones. And today, when I finish this podcast later, I pick up the phones and phone my prospects, because my competitors aren't do that. Friday afternoon is a tough time to pick up the phones.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you do it, I'm any sort of magician or any type, but
it's about being consistent, and it's about pushing through
and
regardless and showing up. And I think, like you were saying, that this morning I went for a run, it was -2 degrees. I didn't do the normal 6Ks just because I think my body was just frozen, but I did 4Ks. And I think my wife was like, "Are you really going to run? It's cold." And I made a joke and I said, greatness is not determined on the temperature of the weather. Like, obviously, that it's more than that. And I made a joke about it. And essentially what it comes down to is, and I think what you're saying is, like, it's consistently just showing up and it's consistently just doing, whether the conditions are there or not. So whether it's Friday afternoon or whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever it essentially is, you don't want to necessarily bother someone on a Sunday and give them a call necessarily, but there's ways of sending emails or scheduling an email, like today, research. There's always something that you can do, regardless of the conditions that's holding you back, and that's very true. So you mentioned, all right, pitching up, showing up. Obviously, the follow-up process is really crucial in terms of getting that sale. A couple of other things.
So obviously, showing up, I said, is 90% of it. So we've covered 90%. I really believe that, because people don't show up.
Yeah,
they got the same issues. My wife also wants to go away this weekend, so that's 90% of it. And then we've got the process, we've got the marketing side of it, where we're trying to get new leads into our funnel. We've got the follow-up side of the marketing.
You need to have those processes in place that actually allow you to generate the leads, because, and that's what I'm hearing you say here, is like essentially sorting out. And I think to conclude, technically, the point is that you need to have the sales processes in place. And then you have to have the systems in place that's going to help you generate those leads. So the leads will come in automatically. And essentially, if you've got well-documented processes and systems in place, which is crucial, your team can obviously focus on converting those leads.
Yeah, I mean, in our specific example, the leads come in from marketing.
Yeah.
We've got one person, or now I've got two people picking up those leads on the phone. I speak to these people all day, every day, who are picking up the phone, just making sure they understand what they're saying to these customers or prospects. And then from an email side, the leads are going to the same two people. And I wouldn't call them vetting, but they're getting an understanding of the problem, the understanding of, as people say, can you just send me a quote?
Yeah.
And I've got one lady now based in Cape Town who's doing it, and she would say, would you mind telling me what you want to see on that quote, other than pricing?
Yeah.
Because I'm then, just working out what to say. So I've got that process where the leads are coming into my funnel.
What's the response to that, if you had to ask? Like, what do people want to see on the quote, just out of interest? Like,
they open up.
Yeah.
They open up. They say, well, I was tasked with this, or my boss said to me, do this, or I'm running a tender for this site who's got this problem that we're trying to solve. You'll be surprised if you say to me, send me a quotation, and I say to you, do you mind telling me what you want to see on that quote? You would say to me, you would open up and you would go, look, this is the problem. Currently the site's got this issue, or currently we're taking over the site from a security company point of view, and we want to do it as an add-on service. But I've got massive insight into the problem just by asking one question, and that's just one where I've already won up against my competitors, just sending a random quote, no much context, nothing there.
And I want to touch on that, because what happens now is you sending a quote which is not solving their problem. And if they had to compare it with somebody else, they think they're comparing apples with apples, but they're actually not. And I think a lot of times you're quoting, but you don't necessarily know what you're quoting for. So we get it all the time. Request for proposals. We need a digital marketing strategy for the we don't do any RFPs. Like, we just tell them this is our offering, just because it's usually not something that we too phased about. But out of interest, what we usually do is, like you've said, when someone sends a quote, I don't necessarily send a quote at all. So I'll first get on the phone. I was like, do you have 2 minutes to chat? Or do you have, essentially, is this a convenient time? If I couldn't get them on the phone. And then I would usually wait the next day and I'll email them again and try again. And I keep following up until I've actually heard on the phone or via email exactly what they want. So it's funny you say that, because that's exactly what I do, just purely because of the fact that I believe in, I can't just send a quote. Like, our business is not of that nature. And I don't think any business is really of that nature, unless...
It's a commodity, but there's still a service that goes with it. There's still an understanding of the person. If I sell spark plugs to businesses, and they ask me for a quote on spark plugs. The guy who's got the cheapest quote may win.
Yeah.
But in the, I've got massive value that I add. Maybe with my spark plugs, I get them to you the same day. Maybe I've got COD and this guy charges
longer
30
guarantees or
months.
whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a million things at play here, and you've got to understand some of those things to give you the edge. Just on that point, so I've got these two people. They pick up the phones. They would then answer the calls. We would then it goes straight into the pipelines, and it would be split between the sales team on the ground. We've got them split into areas. Joburg, Cape Town, Western Cape, Mpumalanga, Namibia, etc. And we got them split into areas and split accounts also, and then they would follow. Then they would set up a meeting. Sometimes this person, the people who pick up the phone, would set up the meeting, or sometimes the sales rep would set up the meeting. But that's kind of the process. I'm making sure that the leads are coming in, they're getting vetted on a high level. I don't want to create noise for my salespeople. I'm paying them a lot of money. I want them to focus on things that are going to actually have a chance of closing. So I'm vetting what's coming into their pipeline, and then I'm also getting a transparency when I go over their pipelines with them, and making sure that their pipelines are flowing and going through and making sure they're hitting their targets. And I keep going on over those with them also. And I think that whole process from the marketing side, we're creating awareness, we're demand generating, we're creating demand. And when we're doing that together, aligned with the sales team, we're bringing the leads in, we're vetting them, so we're not creating too much noise. I'm going over their pipelines with them, and then from that point, they are closing potentially, and they'll be becoming customers. So I think that's, from a business owner, keep it very simple. Don't overthink things. You don't want to start implementing crazy systems. But from a process point of view, just map out the process. Keep it simple. It doesn't have to be 30 stages. We've got 3 stages, 2 stages. The lead comes in, goes to a salesperson, they set up a meeting, and then on to close or something like that to start. And then as you kind of get traction, I would start choosing who you want to speak with, because you don't want to waste your time. And refining those criteria. Do I want to speak to people who got Gmail accounts? At the beginning, maybe yes. After 6 months, when guys are contacting me, I only want to speak to people with a domain. I only want to speak to people in Joburg. I only want to speak to people who are in Sandton. I only want to, whatever the case is, you keep tightening the criteria. And then you got your people who you're paying focused on things that are actually worth their while. And you keep tightening those criteria, you keep creating the messaging to bring in the right leads, and you show up to play.
Tell me something for small businesses starting out in terms of CRMs. I mean, there's so many. There are hundreds. I mean, obviously you've got the HubSpot that everybody knows about. Pipedrive is quite popular. I mean, there's Salesflare, Company Hub. There's a lot of them. You guys are very happy with Pipedrive currently, but as a business starting out, is there anything specific that you'd recommend?
They're all good, as you said. I wouldn't go Salesforce starting off the bat.
It's quite sophisticated.
Yeah. And expensive and overcomplicated. You don't need all of that. Something like Pipedrive, HubSpot, Zoho, Zendesk. Pipedrive, I'm happy with.
In terms of cost, affordable?
Yeah, they do have South African teams or focused on the not South African market, but I would say it includes
support teams and pricing.
Including in Europe, yeah. With the right times, they're flexible in pricing, they understand the currency, they understand the change.
That's important.
But look, if you're selling a product which or any kind of anything that you're selling, and if you could get a few more deals every month extra because of Pipedrive, would it be worth it? I mean, and that's kind of the way I see it. If I bring in one new deal because of my CRM, I'm making money on it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. I know they're following up on their tasks. I've got the transparency. I sleep like I'll pay for it out of my own salary if I have to.
Yeah.
Because I sleep good. Because I know what's going on. And so any of those basic ones, I wouldn't overcomplicate it. I would start very basic. You could even Google what's out there and then customize it as you kind of go.
Yeah, HubSpot is free to start with,
Exactly.
and they've got some really good
solutions. And that's the
solutions.
genius of HubSpot. How do we know at the bottom of Africa we know about HubSpot? Because they free, they saying, just like my thought process. We got a problem, we solve a problem, we'll solve it for free. And if we see that it's solving it lacquer, you'll take up our full product.
Yeah, because they've got a lot, and they're obviously expanding. They're becoming a sales hub, basically. That's why they're called HubSpot, right, I suppose. Ari, I want to thank you for coming through today, man. It was a real pleasure having you on board, and I think it was really crucial to talk about specifically sales processes, just purely because I think a lot of business owners don't necessarily get that there's two sides of closing deals in terms of marketing. Is like marketing is just the first step. Closing the deal is a lot more sophisticated than people think. It's not just about sending one email or making one call and then hoping for the person to, say everything is good to go and here's the money to do so. There's a lot more things involved, follow-ups, negotiations, and really see if the product is a fit for the business. So from our side, I think thank you so much for coming through. It was a real pleasure having you on board. And I'm confident, and I'm really stoked about the value that you've added. And I'm confident there's a lot of business owners out there who feel the same way. So thanks for that. And yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to have you on again soon, purely because I think there's a lot of other things that we wanted to discuss in terms of customer relationships, how one manages that. So I definitely think we're going to have you on again sometime soon. Thanks again. And yeah, we hope to see you around.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Cool, man.